Hello, Internet. So nice to see you. We are here this morning for me, maybe not for you guys, for another music theory talk. So, guys, as the title says, we're going to talk about right ways and wrong ways to train your ears. Music is an auditive art. Duh. Okay. If you cannot hear it properly, you are at a great disadvantage, like being a blind painter. Okay. So, and there are blind painters out there, and they're also good. But wouldn't you prefer everything else being the same to be able to see? Okay. So, today, to help us with that, I've invited an expert. Before I introduce the expert, though, I know you guys are watching us from all over the world. So if you're watching us, say in the chat or in the comments, okay, where are you coming from? Just say hi. I want to see who's watching us and from where you guys are. It's always interesting for me to see people watching us from Azerbaijan, okay, or other places all around the world, from wherever you are. So just say hi in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce our expert today, Mr. Dylan Andrews. Hi, Dylan.
Hey, Tommaso. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So, Dylan, people are gonna ask the first thing. If I know my internet, okay, if I know we are live on YouTube and Facebook right now, and if I know my people, the first thing they're gonna ask me is, Tommaso, who is this guy, Dylan Andrews, and why is an expert on your training? So, Dylan, who are you?
I have been playing guitar for about 20 years now, and specifically been working on training my ear for over a decade. I first started really learning about oral skills, ear training back when I started going to music school. And then when I started becoming a full-time professional musician, I found out exactly how important oral skills really is to becoming a great musician. I signed on to a record label and was doing tons of shows. I was working as a studio musician and still do, and just promoting and writing a ton. And it came very clear that if you want to become a really, really good guitarist or musician, oral skills, ear training is absolutely a must. And also on top of that, I've been teaching for now over a decade as well. And I also have a school. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I also have a music school here in Atlanta, Georgia, too.
And one thing I'm gonna comment on this because when you tell people you worked in a studio, they have specific images in mind, which are typically not what actually happened in the studio, as you know. So I had people tell me, so they're giving you a score and you have to read from the score. I'm like, yeah, I wish.
No, not at all. Never. Yeah. It's okay. Here's a song. Make up a really awesome part right now.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how it goes. And if you
And
don't
they
have
often
your
don't tell you the chord progression or the key or anything. They're like, that's the thing. Deal with it.
they tell you when to be there, and that's it. That's
Yeah,
pretty
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, there's no guidance. And that's too why they're hiring you is they like your style, they like your creativity, and they just say, okay, we know what you can do, go for it. We're not going to write your parts for you. But yeah, if they did, it'd be a lot easier.
Oh, yep. Yep, it would.
Yeah.
People are always scared of having a score and read from it, but I'm like, that's the easiest gig ever because it's already
Yeah.
written.
Yeah, I've had many of those, and those are no problem. I get to relax on those shows.
Yeah. So just to tell you guys, so when you go in the studio, you really need to have good ear. You cannot spend minutes. You have to listen to the song and know what it is and play on top of it and make it good too. So really,
Yeah,
there is no time to waste there.
right.
Dylan, let's start. Let me say hi to a few people in the chat. We have Ariana, doesn't know where she came from. Ferdaus Abdul Kadir, that was hard to pronounce, from Singapore. Svitiana from Ukraine. Mario from Querétaro in Mexico. San Domingo from Turkey. Domino, sorry, not Domingo. Frank from Connecticut. Mike, Victor, my Mike. So we have a few people from literally all around the world. So You're now being seen internationally. Okay.
Awesome.
So we're gonna start with the hard questions. Well, the first one was already a hard question, but the second one is even harder, probably. Let's go for the controversial stuff immediately.
Okay.
Are the wrong ways to train your ear?
Yes, there are so many, but some of the top ones that I've seen a lot of other people do, and that especially when I first started training my ear, I was making these mistakes as well. Is one really big one is training your ear to hear intervals or notes in isolation. So what I mean by that is like listening to a second interval or a third interval with no other chords, with no other context, you're just listening to that over and over and over. And this is absolutely the wrong way to train your ear, because when you listen to those notes or those intervals in context, they will sound completely different. So listening to intervals in isolation, listening to chords in isolation is absolutely a big waste of time. Trust me, I've wasted a ton of time doing this. If you download, I highly recommend not to do this, but if you have downloaded an ear training app or something, pretty much 100% of it is in isolation. You hit the course where you got to listen to the second interval and the third interval. Then you listen to the fours and the fives. Then you try to identify the threes and the twos. And one, not only does it not work, but it's just incredibly boring. So that's the first really big one, is listening to anything in isolation is pointless. You need to train your ear to hear these things in context. All right. And then
I'm gonna comment this because guys, that's the goal. It's years I've been saying at this point. Do not download an app. Okay.
please don't.
I mean, I never found a good one anyway. And do not spend all your time doing. Oh, that's a perfect fourth. Oh, that's a minor third.
Yeah.
It doesn't take you anywhere. I mean, it's. I mean, again, I've been doing it too. And if you give this to me at this point, I probably have 100% ratio. But it's useless. You never do this in real life.
No, you don't. So why would you train your ear to do it? You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
But that's how it's taught, you know, for some reason. But yeah, definitely don't listen to any chords or any notes in isolation. Another big problem that a lot of people do, especially when they're first learning how to train their ear, is relating songs to intervals. And what I mean by this is to memorize the sounds of, let's say, a perfect fifth. People will do this. They'll relate the perfect fifth to, let's say, Star Wars. And then every time they hear the Star Wars, they'll know that it's a fifth, okay, in theory. And then another one is like the perfect fourth is the wedding song. All right, so when people are first training their ears, they try to relate songs to every single interval, so it'll be easier to identify when they hear it. Well, again, this is listening to these intervals in isolation, because the problem with that is when you hear a fifth being played, if it's not played with that specific rhythm in that specific order, it's not going to sound, and also with those specific chords behind it, it's not going to sound like Star Wars. It's going to sound completely different. Same with the wedding song, same with any song that you relate intervals to. So all of the practice you spent listening to intervals and identifying them based off songs is completely wasted, because when you listen to actual music, it's completely different. And there's also another really big problem with this is, let's say you are trying to transcribe your favorite song. You're trying to write song and be inspired and get really creative. Do you really want to be thinking of Star Wars and the wedding song and another song, When the Saints Go Marching In, people relate certain intervals to? I definitely don't. So that's another big mistake, is relating songs to intervals.
Yeah, the problem there is that if we go for Star Wars, we were in C, no? Good, okay. That's the sound. That's a fifth. Great, but it's the sound of the first note of the key, the tonic, going into the fifth note of the key. Which
Yes.
is, if you were playing a fifth between, I don't know, the second note of the key and the sixth note of the key, which is still a perfect fifth, once we put it in context, it doesn't sound the same because they're not the same notes in the key. So that's the point. It's thinking only of the interval between two melodic notes. It's what everybody does, but it's not what makes those two notes sound that way. It's what are those two notes in the scale in relation to the chord that they are on, and all these kind of things that make the sound.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's training your ear to hear scale degrees,
Yep,
right? Yeah,
exactly.
and then when it's played as an interval, like you said, the second scale degree to the sixth. Well, now we're all screwed. It's all
Exactly.
now.
And,
You know?
and you see, that's the thing. For years now, there's been this fad on YouTube about learning the fretboard or whatever you want through intervals. Well, why the real thing, and I've been saying this forever, it's learning it through scale degrees. I'm
Yes.
totally glad we agree here. Okay.
Yes, yes, and it can be a tricky thing to when you're explaining it and understanding because they can be so similar. But a scale degree is just basing everything off the one of the key, and then intervals are a distance from any note to another note. That is the big difference, and a lot of people use the term intervals kind of incorrectly. If I were to say the first scale degree to the fifth scale degree, that would be absolutely correct. If I were to say the fifth interval, the 1 to the 5, it's also kind of correct, but it's more correctly you want to talk about the scale degree, and that's the big difference. And if you can understand that, it will help you a lot in ear training. It will go a very, very long way. Okay. So let's get on to. Oh no, go ahead, Tommaso.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask you the next question, which is there are all those and by the way, you touch only two of the wrong ways, but I'm sure we could go on and on for hours.
We go for hours on all of the wrong ways.
It's you see that's the curse of us teachers. You see, guys, we have a very specialized approach to things because not only we know the music, okay, we know the theory, the practice, etc. At least passably well, let's say, okay. But
Yeah.
then we also think a lot about how to communicate with people. That's the teacher expertise. How do we format what we know so that another human brain can understand it and apply it,
Yeah.
okay? Which is important. And what we every time we go around and we see, and we go on YouTube learning, um seeing what other people are doing. I mean, there are people out there doing the right thing. I'm not saying we're not the only geniuses here, but most of the places where they teach you ear training, for instance, in this case, they are doing exactly the wrong thing. It's a torture for us. Okay, we go around like, no, why? So
It is.
that,
It's tough.
it is. It is. So what happens now? People teach this the wrong way. What happens to the students when they are learning it the wrong ways? What are the consequences of those wrong
Well,
ways of teaching?
there are a lot of consequences. One huge consequence is the students end up without realizing it waste a lot of time. And people can waste years training their ears and trying to do it in this way, and it just doesn't work. And another big consequence is students can feel like the reason that it's not working is their fault. That the teachers get it, everyone else around them get it, but they're not getting it down. So then that kind of really demotivates you and makes you want to give up and makes you want to just quit and stop doing it at all. And I speak from experience too, because when I first started studying ear training, this is how I was taught. I was taught in this way. I was told by master guitar players, I mean, incredible guitar players, to relate songs to intervals, to listen to things in isolation, and all of these things. And I wasted a lot of time trying to go through it. And I felt like I was the problem, that there was something wrong with me. I wasn't talented enough. I didn't have the right skill set, so it really hurts the motivation to become a better guitar player. And two, I dug in a little bit and I started asking these teachers about ear training and how they trained and what they do. And they didn't do any of that. They didn't relate to intervals. They didn't do it, but that's how they were teaching it. So that the consequences of it really in the end, I think, make students feel bad about their playing and their skills and makes them want to give up.
And you see, that's another thing that really baffles me. Is like all those people, they're teaching you that way because they think they're supposed to teach you this way, but they're doing something different. And it never dawns to them that maybe they should just teach you what they're doing.
Right. They started outside of like class because this was back in music school. They would say different ways to train their ear that was correct and great. But in the class, they were teaching all of these other ways that they don't use. So I was like, why are we going through it? You know, it baffles me too. I don't know.
I don't know. What I know is that whenever I teach people what I do. That's simple as that. I mean,
You would hope, and the students would assume so. You know, they would assume that you're teaching things that you have learned and it's worked for you, so you're teaching it to us because you know it works because that's how you did it. You know, but that's the logical way.
That's a logical way. So why are all those people teaching? Why people keep using those ways of teaching?
I think people keep using them. One is they are unaware that there is a much better way to train their ear. This way of teaching is so common that people just assume this is the way you do it. This is the best way because you see these amazing musicians and players teaching it in this way. So a lot of people assume this is the way you do it. This is the best way to go through it. And I think also too, we are really comfortable with learning in a linear way. Like when you learn math, you have to learn that in a linear way usually because you can't divide and multiply before you know how to subtract and add and stuff like that. But when in music, this is not the way you should learn. So I think that people are used to a linear way of learning. They're used to a linear way of teaching where memorize the twos and memorize the threes, where memorize the fours, where this just makes people comfortable and it makes sense right away. But they should be learning it in a more geometrical way, like Tommaso, where you should be learning multiple skills and building it all up together. But I think people are using it primarily because of that it's just so common. People keep teaching it without putting in a lot of thought to why, and people just keep assuming that, well, that guy taught it this way, so this has to be right. This is why I'll teach it. And then people assume, well, that guy taught it that way, it must be right. So I think it's just that effect that causes a big reason why they're doing that.
I see something similar in theory, like we always thought it this way, that must be the right way, then in practice they do something different. And I also think it's a matter of they're easy to teach this way. There are a lot of things, cage system, there are a lot of things that are, sorry, there are a lot of things that are taught and used essentially because they are easy to teach, easy for the teacher, but they're not really easy on the students and or even useful for the student.
Right. Yeah, I see that a lot. It's easy in the beginning, but in the long term, it doesn't work.
Yeah, they paint you into a corner.
Right.
So yes, exactly. So now at this point, we've been talking about all the wrong ways to do it. Okay, and I can see the audience now brimming with curiosity. See, I have this. So how to do it right? And another comment here. So what's the right way? Okay. So I think it's like we are slowly cooking them. No, now they are ready. They're ready. Okay. Now, why we talk about all the wrong stuff? It's important to talk about the wrong stuff. People go like, no, give us the constructive way. Great, we're gonna give you that. But it's important to talk about the wrong things and why they exist. Because just avoiding the wrong thing, you don't waste a massive amount of time. It's better to not do anything than consistently doing the wrong thing. Okay.
Exactly. If you don't know what to avoid, you'll have a mix of doing the correct things and doing the wrong things. And you don't want that. You just want to do the right stuff. Right.
Okay. So
right.
So that's why it's very, very, very important to talk about the wrong things. And I know people are always like, no, I also only want to hear about the good stuff. I get it, guys. But the only way to move forward is to first discard the wrong stuff. That's the way. And that's already a big progress. That said, we're not going to spend the whole time talking about the wrong things. So now we're going to talk about some of the right way. I'm going to say some because in the time we have, we cannot do a complete course on ear training, of course.
Many months.
Many months, yes.
Many hours.
Like many things, there are many things you can do with ear training, with your oral skills. There are many skills. There are many you can gain. There are many abilities you gain musically. So, of course, it takes a lot of time to learn, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's impossible or hard or okay. It's just the more you learn, the more useful it is. Anyway, Dylan, get us started.
Okay, so like Tommaso said, there are a lot of different ways to train your ear, but I want to talk about some underlying things that you need to be doing to train your ear no matter what exercises you're doing. And the absolute best way to train your ear is through singing. Okay. So, one thing about this is you do not have to be a good singer to be able to do this. I am an awful singer. I think, Tommaso, you've said many times you're not a great singer as well.
And indeed, before you guys leave, okay, here, Dylan. I know at the moment he said sing, you were already hovering over the button. Okay, I've closed the tab and go away.
Do this.
Relax. Okay, okay. I know that because I've been that person too. Guys, honestly, occasionally I demonstrate some of the stuff singing with my voice, and I can see people cringe. So okay, so I'm not a great singer. I honestly I've never heard you, Dylan, but probably in a few minutes I will. So, but the point is not in singing well or in having other people listening to you. It's using your voice as an instrument to learn. So everybody relax, okay? They're not putting you in front of a crowd. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And there's aesthetic singing and there's functional singing. Aesthetic singing is like a professional singer. The tone is great. They perform. It sounds awesome. All right. And you absolutely do not need this. What you need is functional singing. And every person ever can have functional singing. All it is if you hear a note, you can sing that note. If you can match that pitch, you can train your ear. Okay. All right. And as well, when I first found out the best way of training your ears singing, I wasn't stoked either. Okay. I wasn't super happy about it, but it absolutely is true. It is the best way. So, with singing, one of the things that you can do to really start training your ear is simply by singing scales. So, if we start with just, let's say, the major scale, that's just the G major scale. All right. So what you want to do is when you're singing this is you are training your ear not to hear individual notes. You're training your ear to hear scale degrees and intervals. All right. So with this specific one, we're doing scale degrees. So I'm starting on the G note, this key of G major, or the scale of G major. And I'm just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And if this is new, the first thing you can do is you can just play the note and then try to replicate that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. All right. But that is just a warm up. To really train your ear is you need to be able to sing the notes before you play them, because this is the true test. If you really know what intervals and scale degrees sound like, then you should be able to replicate it, because this means that you can hear it in your mind first and that you can replicate it. And then if you check it on the guitar and if it's right, you got it right. So let's all try this real quick together. Let's try this exercise out. All right. So I'm going to play the scale one more time. All right. So here's the 1. Now try to sing the 2 and make sure you're saying 2. There's the 2. If you're off, just adjust. Now try to sing the 3. Now try to sing the 4. Then the 5. Now the 6. Now the 7. And then the 1. All right, so that is, first off, a great exercise to do. And you can, of course, do this with the minor scale. You can do this with modes. You can do this with melodic minor, harmonic minor, whatever scales that you want to do. But just being able to ascend them and descend them is one of the best things that you can do for your ear. And if that is easy, well, then you can start just removing scale degrees. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, maybe you go straight to 3.
So wait, before we go ahead, a couple of things. One, if you're following us right now, do sing. I mean, unless you have a lot of people around you and you are self-conscious.
Sure. Yeah.
But this video is going to stay on the YouTube channel. So later, maybe come back and use this as a training tape. Okay, come back, listen to Dylan, and follow the exercise. Okay, you can use it as a training tape. No problem, guys. Okay, it's here. You can see it as many times as you want, and I'm happy if you come here and see it several more times. Okay, no problem. Okay, so do that. And what Dylan just said, it's gold. It's a simple exercise. You may even have heard before, okay? But if you do it, I mean, I was doing it right now. I muted the microphone. First, because you don't want to hear me go 5, okay? Second, because I'm spoiling the exercise if I'm singing it before you. So, but I'm following too. If you go back on the recording, you can see me singing in the little rectangle inside here. You can see me singing. So do it too. Do it too. Now, Dylan, the next one was again removing scale degree. So go on with that.
Yes. If this is easy, then you can start removing scale degrees. So you sing the scale, but maybe the second isn't there anymore. So then you're going 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And you can practice that with removing different ones one at a time. So then you could sing it again, but maybe the 4th isn't there anymore. Maybe the 7th isn't there anymore. All right. And let's try this out real quick. Let's just see how this goes. I'm going to remove the 2nd scale degree and the 5th scale degree. Okay. So here's the scale one more time. All right. So here's the 1. Now try to sing the 3rd scale degree. Okay. Adjust if you were off. Now try to sing the 4th. Now try to sing the 6th. Now the 7. And then the 1 or the 8. And there you go. So if that was more difficult for you, then that'll be a really good challenge. And you could remove as much as you want. But singing intervals and orders like this or scale degrees is one of the best ways you can train your ear. Another thing you can do is singing specific arpeggios. So you could practice singing arpeggios up and down the key. So if I'm in the key of G again, I would practice singing 1, 3, 5 from this G note. So 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. Then I would start on the 2 and I would play 1, 3, 5 from here. Now this does have a minor third though, because in a major key, the 2 is minor, but practice singing that. 1, 3, 5, 3, 1, 1, 3, 5. And you can just do the arpeggios up. So with the scales, that's going to train you to be able to hear melodies, guitar solos. With these arpeggios, it's also going to start training you on being able to identify chord progressions really, really easily. All right, and let's just try a couple of these. Let's try it from the 1. So sing that 1. Now try to sing the 3 from there. Now try to sing the 5. Okay, back to the 3. And then the 1. All right, now let's try it, but starting from the 2nd scale degree. So this is our new 1. We're treating this as 1. Okay, so we're singing 1. Now you're going to sing a 3rd from here, or a minor 3rd. And then 5. Back to the minor 3rd. And then back to the 1. And you would continue this exercise by going in order. And so on. And if you want to make it even more challenging, do that out of order. But singing arpeggios can be more of a difficult challenge. So if this was harder for you, then that makes complete sense, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with training your ear, especially in this way. But some other ways too, unless you want to comment on that, Tommaso, I can go into some other ways.
So far, so good. That's a typical something. After a while, you just learn it by heart, essentially, because it's something you sing. Incidentally, yeah, when you start learning it by heart, change it. Okay, there's less to be gained by singing something you know completely by heart. There's much more to be gained to think about what to have to calculate what is the pitch I have to sing and then sing it.
Exactly. As soon as you're starting to do things on autopilot, this means that your brain has checked out. And when you're progressing, it all happens in the brain first. So you need your brain aware and focused. So as soon as you've got something down so much that you're just checking out, yeah, change it up. Make sure that you're constantly being challenged and that your brain is engaged, right? While you're practicing ear training or anything you're practicing.
Yep. I have a couple of questions here from the people, so might as well. When you get to the 2, wouldn't it be more beneficial to sing 2, 4, 6 instead of 1, 2, 3?
No.
There you have it.
Well, there's 2 thoughts here. Okay. So 1, if you're just practicing singing the scale degrees and you're just practicing singing them from different starting points, then yeah, singing 2, 4, 6 is going to do this. Well, this ear training exercise is the purpose of it is to help you be able to identify chord progressions more. And when a chord changes in a key, okay, so let's just go back to the key of G since we've been there. I am in the key of G the entire time, no matter what chords I play within this key. All right, but when let's say that I go to the 2 chord, our ear is going to now perceive that note as the 1. So when we hear other notes being played like a melody, our ear is going to base it off of this. So it is much more beneficial in the long term to sing 1 because you're training your ear to hear how notes react around that chord being played. And for instance, if I were to play, let's say a G chord, and I'm hitting this D note, right? Well, D is the 5th of G. So it's going to sound a certain way. But if I play a C chord and then hit that same D note, well, now it wants to move. The function has changed because our ears are perceiving the 4 chord as the 1. And this is something called modulating pitch function, where the functions of the pitches are changing every single time the chord changes. So it is more beneficial that when you're singing those arpeggios, you're treating each scale degree as the 1.
Exactly. That's another distinction like interval, scales, degree. Interval is the distance between 2 notes. Scale degree is the position in the scale. Function is the position relative to the chord. Okay, which at the beginning this stuff looked like needlessly complex. Like you study this and like why? Why? It's just a C note. Right. But once you start playing and listening, you realize that those are 3 things. And those are 3 things, and they apply in different situations. So it's important to know the distinction. Okay. So anyway, scale degree is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 1, 3, 5, 3, 1, 2, 4, 6. So that would be the scale degree. So the not in the scale, like our commentator Yam is saying. But when you sing it, it's better to sing the function respect to the chord. So that's a 1, 3, 5 in that chord, and that's a 1, 3, 5 in that next chord, and that's a 1, 3, 5 in the next, and a 1, 3, 5, and I hit the limit of my pitch. Okay, but yeah, that's the other thing. I'm kind of a baritone bass, so
yeah, just as good as me. Yeah.
You need to sing in falsetto all the time to get even moderate high notes. But anyway, so you sing on the chord, you sing the numbers with respect to the chord, and those are more useful when you improvise. Okay, honestly, Personally, I would actually do both. I would do more the chords, but I would also do the scale degree just to keep them in my mind.
Right,
But if
right.
you have to pick one, I agree with Dylan. Pick the chord.
Yeah, it's not that singing 2/4/6 is bad or it's going to do damage to your ear. It's a waste of time. It just has different benefits and pros and cons.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And then here you have, that's not a question, but I still want to talk about that because it's the good old do re mi helps. Now the problem, well, yeah, but the problem with do re mi is this: is that in music we have different notation depending on where you live from, where you live in. So here in general North America, you name the notes following letters, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yep.
And do re mi is typically what is called the movable do system. So do is the first note of the key, re is the second note of the key, mi is which is a great system. I like it. But if you go in Europe, well, in Southern Europe, so Italy, Spain, etc., we use do re mi for the notes. So do is C. We don't use the letters. Okay. If you go okay, so it starts to be confusing. Okay, because I think also in South America they use a similar system. So they use the fixed do system, which, I mean, it's a way of naming the notes, but then you don't have any names for the first degree of the scale. The way to bypass all this problem is just use the numbers. Okay,
Yes.
so that's the easiest way. One for the first note of the key, two of the second note of the key. Now, for instance, the third could be a major third or a minor third, but it's still the third note of the key, so you can just use three.
Right. Yeah, you can, as you're singing or practicing it, you can say three, even though you know it's a flat three or a minor third. I just say three and sing three because I know it's a minor third. There's no harm in doing that.
Exactly. So this is just to clarify a point, because people sometimes confuse do re mi with fixed or movable, etc., etc. I don't know how it's possible that in the year of the Lord 2023 we are still don't agree on how to call even the notes. Okay, but hey, you're still there. Okay. Anyway, you guys use the number. This bypasses all the problems, and it's much clearer what you're talking about, and you don't have to wonder if it's G or the sol or something else. 5 is the fifth note of the key or the fifth note of the chord, but you know which it is. Okay,
Yes.
let's go on with the exercises.
Okay, so along with singing scales, singing arpeggios, another thing you can do is to sing melodies is a really great one where you just write out. And I would do this thinking that you're training your ear. You're not trying to write a great song or a great melody or anything. But what you can do is you can just write out a little, maybe 2 to 5 note melody, and then you try to sing that. So let's say that you wrote out 1, 3, 5, 2, 1. Well, then you would try to sing that and then check if you were right. So 1, 3, 5, 2, 1. So you would check if you sang those scale degrees correctly. And then you would just write out a bunch more. The way that I do this is I write out a list of like 10 to 20. And I just go through one by one. I try to sing it. If I get it wrong, I adjust and I try one more time. And then I go into the next one, go into the next one, go into the next one. So singing melodies is an excellent way to train your ear and also to hear them happening more in application. You can do this while playing a chord. So if you're singing in the key of G, you can be playing the G chord and then try to sing a 1, 4, 5. Okay, so let's try this out right now. The melody we're going to sing is a 1, 4, 5. There's the G scale just to make sure it's in our ears. All right, so go ahead and just try to sing the 1. That's what you should be singing. Or if this is way too low for you, you can sing it up an octave. All right, now try to sing the 4. There's the 4. All right, now try to sing the 5. There's the 5. Okay, so depending on how well you did, if 3 notes is a good challenge for you, then we can just focus on doing 3 notes. And you write out a bunch of 3-note melodies. And of course, you can do this with minor scale, major scale, other modes if you want to. And then if it gets easier and easier, you start just increasing the amount of scale degrees that you're using. And you can even go a step further, is what we were just talking about, is instead of just singing the scale degrees, you can write melodies based off the chord that is being played. So this all goes back into training your ear in application. So that's another great one that it is probably one of my favorite ones to do because it's more musical. It just seems more fun for me, you know?
Yep. Not only that, but you immediately notice when you start doing this on a chord. So you play a chord, sing ba 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 ba, etc. You notice that it's much easier to sing the note of the chord, and it's much easier to jump to a note of the chord.
Yes.
It's harder to sing the note out of the chord, and it's way, way harder to jump to a note out of the chord. It's much easier to get to a note of the chord and then walk step by step to a note out of the chord. Jumping on a dissonance, it's hard. It's not impossible. It can be trained, but most people will not do this naturally. If I play a chord and I ask you guys to sing the first note that comes to your mind, most of you will sing the root. Some will sing the fifth or the third, but nobody will sing the ninth. Okay, or the four or the fourth. The fourth, nobody will ever. Well, you guys cannot hear. Nobody will sing the fourth. If I play this, you will sing this or this or this, not this. Okay. Now, doesn't mean that you cannot sing the dissonance. And actually, these dissonances are very flavorful. They're very emotional notes when you play them on or sing them on the chord. It's just not. Doesn't come natural at first. Okay, so this, it's important because it also explains why when singers improvise melodies, they typically hit all the right notes because they naturally hear a note of the chord and sing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's where all the chord tone soloing things come from, which would be a completely different kind of worm to open right now, which we
Awesome
don't want to go there. But yeah, it's a big topic, especially because it's usually taught in a completely wrong way. But I don't want to go there right now. Okay,
Right.
so that's a great exercise, and it teaches you what a singer will find easy, which is essentially also what sounds good in a melody, because those things are very much related. It also explains another thing. If you guys have ever if I've ever opened a book on theory, not that I recommend studying theory from a book, incidentally, but if you ever open a book on theory, you find that sometimes they're giving you a lot of rules. If you learn counterpoint, for instance, there are all these rules like the melody should never jump more than a fifth. If it jumps more than a fifth, it has to come back. It should never jump by a dissonant interval. It should never jump to a dissonant interval. All those rules makes absolutely no sense when you read them, until you try to sing that and you discover that those rules are there to make the life of the singer easier. Okay, it's already hard to sing one of those things in isolation with the chord. If you have other people singing different notes, it becomes very, very hard. Now, if you have a professional singer, a professional choir, you can have them sing whatever you want. But why? Make their life easier. Okay, so everything we're doing right now will feed into that. Okay, lots of music theory make no sense and seem completely arbitrary until you try to do this simple exercise that Dylan is giving you guys. So you do this, you gain a lot of knowledge, and it's kind of a immediate working physical knowledge, not just theoretical. Okay, just by doing this. So that's a great exercise. It looks very simple, but it's a great exercise and teaches you a lot.
It is, and it's very simple. And I've been training my ear for many years. I still do this stuff. All of these exercises that I'm giving you guys, this is still part of my normal ear training routine. So the thing that people kind of misconceive about ear training is they think it's supposed to be complex and the exercises are supposed to be on another level. But the truth is, ear training is actually really simple. It's really, really simple. I'm not saying it's easy. It takes time to develop, but the things that you need to do to train your ear is very simple. Most of the exercises are things that are not super hard to play. It's just doing them consistently and having patience over the long term is what will give you a really highly trained ear.
At this point, we need to point out another thing, because, like you say, it can be really easy. It doesn't have to be complex immediately. Then you can make it more complex as well, like everything, of
Of
course.
course. Yeah.
But it can start really simple. Now, I remember watching some time ago a video. I'm not gonna say the name of the YouTuber, but all of you guys know him. Okay, and the video was called something like "Ear Training for Beginners, Lesson Number 1." So you would expect an easy exercise, right? Well, the exercise this person gave you was this: on the piano or on the guitar, play a fifth, and you have to sing the major third of the chord. And I'm like, this is really not a beginner exercise. I mean, it's doable. That's the major third. There we are. A bit of pitchy, but okay, get there.
Yeah.
Okay. It's doable. It's not impossible, but it's definitely not somebody a beginner can do, because it requires a lot of other micro skills, like matching the pitch, hearing the scale, singing that note with a jump, etc., that are better developed in the way that Dylan just told you. So that's one thing, is if you go out there and see beginner exercises on YouTube, you're going to find people, obviously competent people, like this person who's an obviously competent person, but they give you super complex exercise that have not right to be called beginner exercises. And so you get the impression that ear training is super complex or for superhumans or stuff like that, when it should not be, and it's not. Ear training is there to help you get in there.
Right. Absolutely.
You were going on with the next exercise, so
Yes. Well, I'm seeing in the chats people are talking about chords as well, how to identify chord progressions. And one thing with identifying chord progressions is by training the intervals, this is going to help you be able to identify chords. Because it's a really good starting point, because if you know every single time that is a fifth scale degree, then when you hear the 5 chord, you're going to be able to recognize it based just off hearing the scale degree. So by training the scale degrees and going through these exercises, this is going to help you be able to transcribe chords a lot. And a little trick too is when you're transcribing chord progressions, if there is one, listen to the bass guitar, because the bass guitar is going to be playing the roots, usually, not always, but usually going to be playing the roots of every single chord, so you can more clearly hear those intervals or those scale degrees. Now, one way that you can start training specifically on chords, though, is my favorite way, is one thing, you need to be able to identify the chords based off of their emotion. Okay. Now, I know for a lot of people, this has never been talked about. You haven't heard this before, but every single chord progression is going to give a certain type of feeling and sound, like the 1 to the 5, the 1 to the 6. And what you want to do is start to train your ear, or like someone mentioned this in the chat, of course, more correctly, your brain is what we're doing, to be able to hear that sound and know based off of its feeling that was a 1 to a 6, that was a 1 to a 5. And there's some huge advantages to this. Is one, you will connect to music way deeper by doing this. You'll understand the feelings, the things that are being expressed. It'll make you a much, much better musician. And the way to do it is just to start very simply, play like a 1 to a 5, and then write out what emotions you feel like that chord is expressing. And some people find it difficult to like write out what feelings they think that is. Like if I say, what is this feeling? How does that feel? A lot of people are going to be like, I have no idea what that feels like. So what's really helpful is have a big list of emotions and stuff right in front of you. And then you can choose which ones you feel relate to the chord. I've done that. It helps a lot. And you want to choose specific emotions and feelings that are specific to the chord. So you don't want to say the 1 to the 5 is like happy, because you could also say the 1 to the 4 is a happy. that's a happy progression, right? So you want to pick something that is specific to that. So when you have that, it takes a little bit of work in the front end, but once you have it forever, and you can start really listening out for that. And then another great way with chords is just creating a lot of recordings for yourself to listen back on. Like play maybe 12 chord progressions. And then this is the way that I've done it is I'll play maybe a 4 chord progression. I'll play it 2 or 3 times, and then I'll say that was a 1, 5, 6, 4. So that way I can go back when I'm listening to it, and I have time to guess what the answer is, and then I have myself telling me the answer if I was right or wrong. So these things really help with identifying chords.
Yep. And I know this sounds very new agey, like associate a feeling with the, but it really works. That's the thing.
It does, and I'm not that type of guy either. So like, let's talk about the feelings and the emotions.
No.
That's not my personality in any way. But when I first started doing this, I was a little hesitant to it. I didn't think that it would really work as well. But now when I listen to music, I know what chord progressions are going on because I'm hearing a certain emotion and feeling. And that makes listening to the song better. It makes writing better. I mean, playing with other people better because you can connect to what you're playing so much more. And that's the point of ear training. It's not to only know what's going on, it's to feel it.
Yep. I mean, after all, we play music because of the feeling. No.
Exactly. And the best guitar solos you hear are because of how emotional they are. They're very clear at expressing specific emotions, whether you realize it or not. The best songs are the best because they are expressing. It all comes down to how well you can express an emotion is how good the song or solo or whatever you're writing is.
Yep. Exactly. I have a question here that it's interesting. It's does whistling work too? What do you think?
That's a good question. Okay, so here's what I would say is I would say whistling does work. Now, I am not speaking from me doing a lot of research in this area. These are just my thoughts on it. But in order to whistle and create the correct interval or the correct scale degree, that does prove you know what that scale degree is. But just be very aware of what scale degrees you're actually whistling. Because if you're just whistling a melody and you don't know if it's a 4 or 5 or 2, then that's not going to do anything for you. But if you know what the scale degree is, I mean, it could help. I can't whistle worth anything. So that's my 2 cents on it. But what do you think, Tommaso?
Well, I actually started by whistling because my whistling is way better than my singing. I mean, not that it's hard to be better than my singing, okay? But my whistling is. But I found that I mean, whistling works, but singing works better.
Okay,
that's the thing. There's more of visceral connection with singing, if in some way. Okay, when you whistle, you're still using an instrument in some way. When you sing, it's not an instrument, it's you. Okay, there is a deeper connection. That's the feeling. It's probably because our speech center and in the brain are strongly connected to our hearing center and all this kind of thing. But it feels more visceral, more real in a sense. So as much as I really hate my voice, I force myself to sing. And that's easier. Okay. And again, like you were saying, it's functional singing. It doesn't have to be aesthetic singing. If I sound like a strangled pig, which I do, okay, it's still better than it still works better than whistling or anything. And June here gets a follow up, like it's just easier to whistle quietly. That's true, but again, you can sing quietly, and even if you're not perfectly in pitch, it's not a big of a problem, because that's the thing. It's even singers sometimes are pitchy, meaning they sing just flat usually, because it's very hard to hit that pitch exactly perfectly, and they do a lot of training. Aesthetic singer, they do a lot of training to hit that pitch perfectly, and still sometimes they don't. Guys, it's normal if you hear a lot of pop stars. Some of them are great singing training, some of them has less than great singing training, or they were on an off day sometime, and you can totally hear sometimes they are pitchy too.
Yeah.
Oh well, it happens. I mean, they still sell millions and millions of copies, so who cares? But I mean, so that happens. And so even if you're a bit pitchy, not a problem. If you sing quietly, it's harder to get the right pitch because you have less air going to the pipes.
Yeah.
But you still get an idea. It's better to go like, even if you're a bit out. I'm pitchy as hell. But I get an idea. I can still connect to this. Then, of course, if you can put yourself under the no isolation bell or something so you can totally belt, yeah, definitely do that. But I mean, it's still better to sing. And I do understand all the problems with that.
Yeah, and I would always, with training your ear or training anything, I would always make the decision to train what is going to work the best. If something is easier, well, you don't want to make your decision based off if it's easy or not. You want to make your decision based off what is going to work the best for me in the long term. Because in the short term, it might be easier, but long term, you're going to have to spend X amount more hours practicing. You're going to have to wait X amount more weeks or months to get stuff down. So, and sometimes the best way is easier, and if that's the case, great. But you always want to be choosing, well, what is the most effective way to train? And that's going to be your decision.
And then if it's hard, if it's hard singing for you, if it's hard to find a pitch, start with just one pitch or two. You can make it easier in other ways. So you just start, okay, let's match this pitch until you get the pitch. If you cannot, sweep the pitches and go like, okay, until you, okay, and you hit the pitch. Whatever. Okay, so you go and match the pitch, sweep until you match. You proceed by successive approximation. You don't have to be perfect. That's the thing. But singing, it's easier than. I mean, no. Singing is not easier, but it's more effective. Sorry. Singing. Blank out for a moment here. Singing is not easier, but it's better. Much better for you to connect. And again, I've tried whistling. I really, really wanted whistling to work better, but it doesn't. Okay, so I get it. Okay, but very good, Dylan. So you also gathered that you have something for us about ear training. So I wanted to talk about that. I'm gonna put that in the. I'm gonna show that. Talk us about that.
So this is a video that is completely free to download. It goes through my 5 easiest and also best ways of practicing ear training. And it goes through some things goes through a lot of things that I didn't talk about in this live stream, but it goes a lot more in depth on exercises and things you can do that is very, very effective. And that you can do every single day. It's not extremely difficult. It's very simple to understand and do. And again, it's completely free. All you have to do is go to the link and download it. And you now have 5 things that you can practice every single day to train your ear.
Fantastic. And you find the link in the description, both on YouTube and Facebook. And so just click there, get it. It's free. Okay. No risk to you guys, right?
Oh, yeah. There's no obligation. You don't have to do anything. Just go get the video.
You don't have to do anything. You don't have to buy anything. You don't even have to do the exercises, though. It would be recommended to do the exercises. Okay. But
you don't have to. You don't even, but it would help if you did.
At least you get an idea on how to train your ear. Okay. And of course, you want guys to want to come back and replay this live stream and follow the exercise that Dylan is doing. I have one thing for you guys too, and that's slightly different. It's about learning the notes on the fretboard. So learning the notes on the fretboard seems impossible at first because there are simply too many notes and too many positions. No, 6 strings, 24 frets or 22, depending on the guitar. It's a lot of positions and notes, etc. So it looks impossible at first, but there are ways to train these, practical ways to train these, so that you know where all the notes are. Now, the common wisdom on YouTube is like use the octave pattern or use other interval patterns. Let me tell you guys, that doesn't work. It just increases your mental load and doesn't really help. There is a way to learn your notes natively on the fretboard so that you don't have to think, and every time you pick up the instrument, you just know where the notes are. It requires a little bit of training, but with 5 minutes a day in a few weeks, you know your notes cold, bam, without even thinking. Problem solved forever. You get this ebook, it's completely free. Again, no obligation, nothing. Just get it. It's free. You download it. Once you download it, you can also get the videos for that. You just need to click on a specific link and create a password so you can access the video. And again, no obligation there either. No purchase required. No string attached. Okay, it's always funny to say no string attached for guitar stuff. Okay, this kind of thing. But get it, watch the video, follow the training. You learn your notes. It's done. For both ear training and learning the notes and some music theory, etc., the key to become better is to know what to do, not know what it is. So just knowing what a chord are, what the notes are, what all those things doesn't really do much for you. But if you know how to train this stuff and put it in practice, okay, so that you can actually do something every day with your guitar, okay, and then you improve because you are taking all those things you're learning, all those wonderful things you're learning, and you are automatizing them so that your hands know how to do them, your voice know how to do them. You can connect your voice with what you're doing so that you can start connecting your voice and your feeling with what you play on the guitar and all these kind of things, so that all this stuff becomes automatized and you gain the skill so that later you can start thinking more about how to express emotions, and you already work on that, how to make great music, and this makes everything easier. As opposed to knowing a lot of things and you have to think about all those things explicitly every time, which makes your life harder because now you have more things to think about, not less, okay? And just because I have a comment here about from Jan, hi Jan, is an exercise 2 of learn the notes, and he likes it. Okay, just saying. And I constantly get feedback on that thing about the not learning. It works if you do the exercises, okay? And I don't know if Dylan has had feedback, but the easy book is pretty new, so I don't know if you get feedback yet on that. But I know it's good. Just a second here. I know it's good, so get that ebook, okay? Guys, thank you very much for coming today at this live stream. Dylan, thank you for coming and sharing your expertise.
Oh, yes. Thank you for having me.
And we have a lot more things to talk about, so I hope to get you back in future because there's lots more to talk about ear training, and that can make our life easier.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for coming. Everybody here, thank you for being here. Thank you for writing in the chat. I'll see you guys next time, and until next time, enjoy.